After all the hype that you've heard over the course of the last 2 years about the Coloradans for responsible wildlife management, we're proud to announce our new venture, the Women of Conservation Calendar, that showcases and celebrates the women that helped defeat Proposition 127. 14 months of the calendar of all of the women that helped, plus more, the convention dates, deadlines, draw application dates, commission meetings, and things going on at the Colorado State Capitol. This is an opportunity to support CRWM and the efforts that we continually work on through the Colorado State Capitol, Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, and to address all of the ballot issues that continually arise. We've got some fantastic sponsors that help prop up and just showcase who these women are. Rodeo queens, barrel racers, houndswomen, general sportsmen, mothers, and every avocation you could think, from archery hunting to muzzleloading to rifle hunting and waterfowl as well. These women stuck their necks out to help save the hunt. Get it for yourself. It makes a great gift. Make sure you get it before Christmas, and look at all the other important dates that are coming up. $24.95, SaveTheHuntColorado.com.
Through the Gates is produced under the support of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. That's our mission. We're engaged in fighting at every level so that wildlife management remains science-based and conservation continues to work for our wildlife. To learn more and join the movement, visit SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The North American model of wildlife conservation is the greatest conservation model in the world. It's a success story that should be shared and celebrated because everybody is a part of it.
So we got another episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, and it's fall of 2025, and I am proud to announce that we're approaching our 70th episode toward the end of the year. And we've had a great lineup of guests throughout the course of 2025. And while we weren't able to get him on at one time, he helped us out during the campaign last year. But I'm proud to say that I've got Mr. Mark Lamm, a former Colorado Parks and Wildlife Area Wildlife Manager. I think he had 39 years in the agency. I don't know what the hell you do for 39 years in that agency, but you worked there, and I think I volunteered for about that long, so it's pretty close. But you recently moved to Craig and came from Fairplay. Give us a little bit of rundown about how you got to where you were at when you retired, and then what you've been doing since then. And we'll get into the discussion about probably a lot more things than what the average person would want to hear.
Sure. Well, thanks, Stan, for having me. I appreciate it. And started my career with DOW at the time, back in 1986 in the training class. And in 1987, I was assigned to the Aurora district. And at the time, when you hear Aurora and you kind of cringe a little bit, actually it was a great district because it went out east all the way to Bennett. Went down to the El Paso, Douglas County line, so I had a lot of wild country still. So that was a good introduction. And then in '92, I transferred as a district wildlife manager to Fairplay, and my wife and I moved to Fairplay thinking we'd be there for about 10 years, and 30 plus years later, finally left Fairplay. And I don't mean finally, because it was
they held you captive up there.
It was a great place to be. And my predecessor, a guy by the name of Jim Jones, had always said, "It's going to grow on you. Just be wary. It's going to grow on you." And Jonesy was right. So I was a wildlife officer down in Fairplay for 20 plus years. And then, like I said, I got stupid and became an AWM. And it was actually a pretty challenging but fun job. Not in the field as much. You do a lot of the computer stuff. You drive a lot. You go to meetings a lot. But it was kind of a step up into the organization where I felt it was pretty important to be able to try to drive a few things and help with a few things that make things better for the guys and gals in the field. So that's where I ended.
You were one of 18 area wildlife managers?
Correct.
In the state?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So I covered Area 1, which was Gilpin, Clear Creek, Mosta Park, and a good chunk of Jeffco.
Okay.
So we were kind of in that front range, that urban-rural interface. So we were dealing with both livestock producers and the big city folks. So it was pretty diverse.
How did they ever divide those areas up? I mean, because you got district wildlife areas, but then you got area wildlife areas.
The areas are typically broken up by GMUs.
Okay.
So that's typically in trying to look at herds and how they. And there are places where you have herds where you're managing herds through two different areas. I mean, we in area 1 and area 13 we manage elk and some deer together, and so that happens. But it's mostly trying to go through the game management units, the GMUs.
And they're in each area is then within the region. So you got northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest. But then you had how many areas are in the northeast?
In the northeast, there's 5.
Okay.
So there's area 1 through 5. So we're all in the northeast with Mark Leslie as our regional manager.
Okay.
So.
And when you got on with the agency back in 86, 87, did you anticipate staying there for 39 years?
No, not by any means. Not by any means. It actually, when I got hired, I was actually trying to get on with Fish and Wildlife Service. I was working up at the Arapahoe National Wildlife Refuge in North Park in Walden, and I was trying to become a refuge manager or something there, and always had an interest in wildlife, and just kind of took the DWM test. I worked, studied, and did some ride-alongs with Steve Porter up in North Park, and then got hired, and here we are. So,
Do you recall when you got hired, was the amount of district wildlife officers the same as what it is when you retired?
it was a lot less.
That's what I was gonna say.
It was a lot less.
They had a much broader area to cover.
And I remember when I took the test, the initial test, I took it at this Colorado State U ballroom, and it was just people. It was all kinds of people. And they also gave the test down in Denver, Pueblo, Springs, Junction, and I want to say Pueblo, and I might be missing, it might be Montrose too. But I mean, the demand to try to get the job at the time was
It
incredible.
was high.
Yeah. So, like I said, got lucky and got hired, and we had a pretty big class. We had 13 people in the class that year, and we all got district assignments. And come January of 92, of 87, we all got on district. So that was really good.
And how many years of college did you have?
I had a little more than most, because I had gone to a small school in upstate New York called Cobleskill, and it was a 2-year wildlife school. Well, it was actually an ag and tech, but they had a wildlife program, and the wildlife prof that we had gotten his master's at CSU, and he was like, there was a group of us, we were pretty close with him, and he was like, you got to go to CSU, because at the time CSU was really working on management, and so there were actually like 6 or 7 of us from a class of 20 that came out to Colorado to go to school.
Who were the guys that we would know in this circle that were in your class?
Pat Tucker.
Uh-huh.
Pat was retired as the statewide HPP coordinator. And then the other person that kind of came on a little bit later than us is now the lead pilot, Larry Gepford.
Okay.
So so it was good. And then one guy went over to Cal Fish and Game, and he became a deer biologist for Cal Fish and Game. And then one of the other folks, she actually went back to New York and worked for Department of Environmental Conservation for a while.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a good class.
And your first big investigation you did as a district wildlife manager, do you remember that and what it entailed?
Probably the biggest thing we were doing at the time, you probably remember the name Dan Prenslow.
Oh yeah.
And so Dan was my neighboring officer, and our supervisor was a guy by the name of John Bradyhoft. And we worked a heck of a lot of nights down by southwest of Castle Rock. And between spotlighters and some illegal guides going on, we spent a lot of time down there doing those assignments. So yeah, a lot of frustrating nights, because you're out there all night and you never see a spotlight, you never see anything. But then the nights that you got into them, it was good. Yeah.
Do you think that I mean, we got more people in the state of Colorado, and there's more sportsmen just because of more people. There's probably more nefarious type people now just because of the, not saying that we have more, but just because of population. Do you think there was more poaching that went on then than what there is today Or do you think the frickin' poacher is just a guy that doesn't give a rat's ass? I'm just looking at it from, between the cell phones and the GPSs and all the stuff that is there to catch somebody. You got a better chance to turn around and follow it up with somebody now than you did 40 years ago.
I don't think there's less, but I also think the sophistication of equipment now makes it harder for a game warden to try to catch
Really?
guys. Just with some of the thermal is out there, some of the communication means that people have. I think it's a lot harder for our guys to try to catch people now.
Really?
Yes. Yep. And I mean, some of the TV shows that are out there on the game wardens, I mean, they've kind of given some of the tricks of the trade.
Right.
So I think people are a lot more cautious now with decoys and just kind of being reckless when they're out there.
Yeah, I remember seeing the first deer decoy that I ever saw over on Fort Carson, and Michael Dunning and Tom Warren
Yeah.
had used it over there. And we were coming out after dark, and my son, little kid, and he's like, look at that buck, look at that buck. and I slammed on the brakes, and I looked over and like, that's not a real deer. And he goes, what do you mean it's not a real deer? I said, that's not a real deer. Well, they were trying to catch whoever would do it. But the sophistication of equipment then was not like it is now.
Correct.
I gave them a hard time. I'm like, if you're going to try to catch somebody, at least use something that looks realistic.
Well, we did. I had just gotten down to Fairplay, and we were going to run a decoy one night down by Terriell Reservoir, and the Bailey officer and the Evergreen officer were coming down with the decoy, and we found a spot. And that morning, I remember I was checking hunters, and I had checked a group of hunters, and the guy in the passenger seat said, I'm not hunting. I said, you're not hunting? And he goes, no, he didn't have a firearm. He didn't have orange on. He goes, I'm not hunting. I'm just here to help. And I was okay, good enough. So, but I written his name down with contacts. And anyway, so fast forward to that night, and we set up, and they bring the decoy out, and it's a deer decoy. And they put up, literally, it's a piece of plywood with a hide on it. And I'm looking at that going, you got to be kidding me. And they literally screw it on a tree and then put the decoy up. And I'm going, there is no way in this world anyone's going to shoot at that. And so we go to our points of where we're waiting, and first truck that goes by, boom, boom, boom. And they go, hey, the shooter is wearing this and this. And they came my way, so I stopped them. It's the guy from the morning who wasn't hunting.
Oh.
And I'll never forget, he goes, why do you do this? Why do you do this? I just remember going, look in the mirror. Because that was exactly why we did it, for guys like that.
He wasn't hunting, it was poaching.
Yeah, right. So that was one of our first things down in South Park that I just remember. And that was one of the first times I think we got shooters on our decoy. I was jinxed. I could never get anybody shooting when we had the decoy out.
Sure.
So yeah. So anyway, so that was that was kind of a fun one.
When did they start becoming more sophisticated, more realistic?
Probably in the 90s, where you started having that robot type with either a tail flick or the head could move, and then you're always worried about the bad guy hitting the servo.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then and there's some great stories of trying to get decoys up, and in all honesty, most of the time you don't get people shooting. I mean, there's more good people out there than bad people, which is great.
Yeah.
But you want to get those bad ones, no doubt.
Did you see guys that were notorious for reoccurrence of their nefarious ways?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. And
Once a poacher, always a poacher.
And you would have people, or maybe even groups, that you were kind of going, oh, okay, they're out. We better kind of pay attention. And sometimes it was just people that they just made honest mistakes, but maybe they just weren't as careful. But there were definitely groups that, as you said, nefarious, just trying to beat the system, no doubt about it.
Which has been hard for me, because as long as I've been doing what I've done, I, as much as anybody that's been in this sort of lifestyle, I had opportunities to do things if I wanted to be an ass, illegal. And now, when it comes to coyotes, there was a little bit of different play on things, because there was like you were fighting to get something that was smarter than you were. But when it came to all the other stuff, I pretty much had a code of honor, because I didn't want to ever look at anything on my wall that I had questions about, or I didn't want to turn around and try to hide something from somebody. And people that that did that, I separated myself away from as a kid, when I was 16, 17 years old and going to high school. And then it was much bigger for kids to be able to engage in that stuff. A lot of those kids, I remember, they didn't have any scruples whatsoever. But I was working in a taxidermy shop. I was dealing with the Nick Pidells and the Clippagers and the Bob Davies and the old game wardens of yesteryear. Well, I had to see them, but I respected what they did. But it never equated to me to turn around and try to even the playing field for me, because I was in the taxidermy business and the guiding and outfitting business, and I just never understood why somebody thought that they needed to cross that line.
And, I trying to get in the mind of some of these people is probably almost impossible. It's just, I think sometimes I just think about some of the hunters that press their luck with long shots instead of trying to take that time to maybe get a little closer or just pass it up. They just got to get something. And so they take that chance, and they, squeezing that or pressing that trigger, and you just have that little flinch. The further out they are, the more that bullet deviates, or more that arrow doesn't make the mark. And I think that's where the guys get themselves in trouble. So, but I was a late bloomer. I didn't start hunting until I was in college, and was pretty unsuccessful for many years. But it was always, you learn more when you were unsuccessful than when you were successful. So I took ate a lot of humble pie on how to hunt elk up in North Park, and which was okay. So it was good. And now it's you had mentioned, what am I doing now since I hung the shingle up, and been scouting. I have an elk license, been scouting some new country that I haven't been in before, and doing some grouse hunting and just trying to get out. We have some horses, so my wife and I have been out a bunch on the horses, and just trying to learn the country. So I don't have a problem.
You're in the neck of the woods where your son and son-in-law are now.
Correct.
Up in Craig. Does that feel weird that they're like they're in the business and you're out of the business?
I had to be more careful.
Yeah, but you know all the secret game warden ways now. You probably taught him to Jared.
It's interesting because I get asked a lot of questions about, hey, what's happening with this and that? And now that I'm retired, one of the things I do not miss about being retired is email. I do not miss email, and so I don't have a lot of the scoops anymore, and I don't go to Jared or to Seth saying, hey, what's happening with this? I just kind of went, I'm gonna ease my way into retirement and try to get my feet on the ground, and then I'll start playing.
Well, the first thing you did when you retired, though, you moved to Craig, and you turned out have you sold your house yet?
We sold a house in Fairplay, thank goodness, and so that all happened, and so yeah, we're all out of Fairplay. Missed the park without a doubt, but still stay in touch with a couple of the producers down there and a couple of my friends that are still there. But yeah, it's already cold, and they've already had a little bit of snow, and
and you're blending into the Craig area.
Yeah, we're trying to meet neighbors. We're kind of on a piece of property out of town, so we have some pretty big landowners around us. So we're just slowly trying to meet people, but a lot to do at our place to try to just get it the way we want it, and So I traded. I was just talking to one of my neighbors from Fairplay. Had a post the other day on Facebook of some moose that were eating aspen. And I said to him, hey, Les, I traded moose and elk for antelope and deer. So so it was good, because our place now, we usually have antelope and deer.
Really?
So yeah, it's okay, and don't have to worry about getting stomped by a moose anymore. So that's all good.
Is that you only been there a short period of time? You retired in what, June?
In June, end of June.
Yeah. Do you notice a significant difference, ideologically, or just between Fairplay and Craig? I mean, you got a lot more people from the Front Range, different dynamic.
Without a doubt.
Really?
Without a doubt, yes.
Because they call it Craig America.
Craig America.
Yeah.
And Fairplay after being in Fairplay for 30 years, that was the other thing. My wife and I figured 10 years we'd be there and we'd move on. And then we had 2 kids and got them through school. And then we said, if we ever get a traffic light, we're out of here. Well, we got a traffic light in Fairplay, so we had to rethink that statement too. And then, and actually the move to Craig was from the kids, because the kids had said, hey, why don't you guys move to Craig? And my first response was, "I'm not moving to Craig." I had an adjective in there that I won't use today, but I said,
What
"Well,
America?
yeah, correct." And after some soul searching and listening to my sage wife, it was like, "Yeah, let's move to Craig." So found a place that was good for the horses and for us, and so it worked out good. So enjoying Craig without a doubt. And like I said, it's just a new adventure. So going out and learning new country and new wildlife too. We didn't have sage grouse. We didn't have sharp-tailed grouse. So trying to learn some of that and just learning the country. So it's all good. But I
Yeah.
definitely miss the job.
You haven't suffered a winter there yet, like a winter, not winter, but a winter.
Correct. Although when my or our daughter was dating her now husband, he already been up in Craig and he was there from that really bad winter, and we had gone up a couple times.
Just a couple years ago.
Yeah, and it was hellacious. And I remember one day we were going into town, and we had driven off his county road onto Highway 13, and there was a group of about, I don't know, 20 elk that were on the east side of the highway, and they were trying to come to the west side of the highway where the snow was even deeper. And I remember there was a spiked bull that was like up to the base of his neck going through that snow. And we were just like, those poor things. And so we ran into town, came back about an hour later, and they had crossed the road, but maybe went 50, 60 yards up on the hill and just had bedded down because you could tell they were just exhausted going through the snow. And when we asked him, where are they going to go? And he goes, oh, hopefully they can make it over the hill because there might be some stuff blowing off over there. But there were no dead ones the next couple of days, but that was a tough winter without a doubt. So we'll see. It's good. It's good.
So you have no reason at this point in time to go back down to Fairplay unless you want to stop by and slap Murdoch around or something.
Correct. Yes. I originally was going to go down this Saturday because there's a cattlemen's meeting. I was a member of the Central Colorado Cattlemen's Association, but I had promised a guy that I would help him with an antelope hunt, and antelope season starts on Saturday. So I had to admit my commitment to the antelope hunt is pretty solid. So
has your successor called you for advice or hey, why can't I get into this drawer?
We've talked a few times, but you mentioned his name, Scott Murdoch. Scott's a smart guy, and we've talked on a couple of things, but he actually hasn't bothered me in a long while. So he's figuring things out, and which is good.
He's a hell of a good guy.
He's a great guy. He's a great guy. That's why I was blessed. I mean, my whole career, I always had great people that I got to work around. When I first moved, I mentioned, I worked with Prenslow and John Brady Hoft and Pat Tucker originally, and then when I went down to Fairplay, we were actually out of the Salida office, and I had Tom Martin and Randy Hancock to work with, and just outstanding people, and then Jim Jones was our supervisor for a while, so I always had great mentors.
Did you work around Travachek?
A Travachek, yep. Well, Willie, yeah. When we were down in Area 13, in fact, Willie and Ron Dobson, they tried to kill me one day when we were kayaking the Arkansas, trying to check fishermen. They were definitely very good kayakers, and we were in the Ark, and it was probably a little more than my ability. And Texas Creek got me pretty good. So,
really?
Yeah.
So you're not much of a kayaker still?
I did it again. So it didn't end it, but no, I'll still kayak.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it was funny. Once we had kids, I didn't kayak as much. So
You're not as buoyant as what you thought you were.
yeah, definitely not as buoyant.
I know that I'm not. I don't get into anything that I can't get out of that easy. So, it sounds like the storied career that you had. You went through a lot of things, and we're going to talk about a variety of different things. We got plenty of time, but you went through lynx introduction. You went through river otter. You went through moose. The backside of the wolf introduction. A lot of things to perpetuate wildlife resources in the state. What was the most promising, enjoyable, memorable component of you having to deal with hands-on wildlife, knowing that it was going to be here in perpetuity?
It's kind of funny you bring up the otter thing, because that was kind of my hook into DOW. Because when I was at CSU at school, I was a poor college kid, didn't have a car, literally had a bike, but I tied into a grad student who was doing the otter project, and so he hired me, even though I wasn't getting paid. I volunteered, but did quite a bit with our captive otters, and shoveled a lot of otter poop, and I found out otters are not friendly little animals.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they are. They see the TV shows, them sliding down the snow, and they are not nice animals. But that was the hook, and I got to help release otters over by Rocky Mountain National Park. So that was my hook. And then
And that'd have been about when?
that was in the early 80s.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And so that was fantastic. And then to answer your question, most memorable thing is probably trapping some sheep over in Georgetown with the drop net. So that we did that several times. Trapped sheep up by the Terrialls. In fact, our son, who you mentioned before, I had him in a backpack. He was a baby at the time, but I remember the biologist at the time, Janet George, going. She called him Dr. J. She goes, "Dr. J is going to probably be a biologist someday, huh?" And it was like, probably. So, because he was in the thick of things. So anyway, so those are probably the things. And I mean, we've removed moose. We tried to look at. There was all kinds of problems with Denver Parks and Rec with beaver damage, and the push from a private group was to stop trapping beavers and killing beavers. And so we looked at trying to, and at least on paper, that if you had just 2 beaver, they would create less damage than the typical beaver family of the adults, subadults, and the kits. So this went all the way up to Mayor Pena. We met with Mayor Pena one time, and it was agreed that we would pick 5 spots all along the Platte and Bear Creek, and Denver Parks and Rec would not remove any of the dams, any of the damage. They would leave everything as it is. And so we had a professor out of UNC who was kind of overseeing the project, and myself and the biologist in the Northeast region were the on-the-ground people. The group with the beaver got a veterinarian that was willing to do tubal ligations and vasectomies on the beaver. So we live trapped the adults, brought them into the vet. They gave them tubal ligations and vasectomies. And then we had these transmitters that he put in them that were about this big and about that big around. Just back in the day, they were just, oh my God, they were huge. And then next day, beaver was okay. We released the beaver. It was a 2-year study. I lost one colony along the Platte right by I-70. Both those beaver had gotten killed. They literally looked like they got beaten to death. It looked like transients, and one got stuff up a culvert. One was dead on the shore, but they'd gotten beaten. The other one was put up a culvert. Lost another one that I found dead down by, I'll call it south of 6th Avenue. And then my best colony was up by Kennedy High School on Bear Creek. And they had built this dam that was unbelievable. I mean, it was, and I was looking at vegetation impacts, and I come to look at the beaver one day, and the dam is gone. And I'm like, huh? And dam had totally been taken out. And those beaver, the pond they were in, they were gone. So with telemetry, I was able to find them. They were up in a private pond up the hill. So we're able to retrap them, live trap them. And I think we were 1.5 years in, and so the decision was made to put new transmitters in them. So I took him to the vet, and the vet, I remember he worked on the female first, and when he opened her up, I remember him going, huh? And I was like, huh? And he goes, yeah, you see these little clam-looking things? And I said, yeah. He goes, she had kits. I go, she had kits. And he goes, I must have done something wrong. I was like, huh? And so he took care of her and put the new transmitter in, and we didn't worry about the male then. And I remember going, well, that means that if she had kits, either the biology on beaver is wrong, because the male had a vasectomy, so he shouldn't have been able to reproduce. So either she got bred by another male, which is completely contrary to what all the data says, or the vasectomy wasn't correct either. So we had a big, long discussion. I transferred to Fairplay. So nothing ever came of it because, and Denver admitted that they broke the dam.
Really?
Yeah. hmm Yeah. So
Or
all
the coordinated efforts between government entities.
so they did it. Yeah. So it kind of ruined everything. All the data that we had was really
That was a 2-year plan?
2-year plan. Yeah. And so that was my introduction to some beaver stuff. So we tried, and like I said, on paper, it made sense that 2 beaver would create less damage than a whole beaver family. But Denver at that time, Denver Parks and Rec didn't play nice.
What do you think about this stakeholder process with the statewide Beaver Management Plan in today's environment and how things are working out, given where we came from, where we're at, what somebody wants, the amount of stakeholders, and the fact that we don't have any tools left besides cages to be able to turn around and advocate for the harvest beaver?
Concerned about the makeup, concerned about some of the players that are on that, and is it really a true stakeholder group to give an honest opinion on how to manage beavers?
Yeah.
That's my concern on it. So I think there's definitely some aspects that are missing. So
Which is common when people bring things up that they don't like the suggestions that are made from other people.
right. Yeah, and that comes back full circle to things we talked about before about the influence of administrations right now. So
Yeah.
are you really getting the best of are you really getting what you're trying to accomplish? And so yeah, concerns.
If you're looking to explore your opportunities to hunt out west, maybe try Colorado. If you're trying to get information about bighorn sheep, elk, deer, private land, public land, maybe it's everything that you want to do as far as pack-in trips. Maybe it's just having a pack trip decided for you, and then when you get there, you just hunt out of a drop camp. Make sure you check out the Colorado Outfitters Association. Colorado Outfitters Association here in the state of Colorado has got a numerous amount of outfitters that are members, and they can supply you with whatever you're looking to try to acquire and what you want to do for the hunt of a lifetime. For more information, check out the coloradooutfitters.org and make sure that you let them know that you heard about them with Through the Gates, and let them know that you're trying to continue to save the hunt in the state of Colorado. We always talk about supporting businesses that support our efforts to be able to save the hunt in Colorado. Well, the Colorado Shed Company in Penrose, Colorado, just outside Canyon City, is one of those partners. Colorado Shed has been building sheds in the state of Colorado for the last 10 years and is actually owned by sportsmen and women. They support the efforts of what the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management has done, and they also support all the organizations that you're probably a member of. Whether you're looking for small modular type buildings, sheds for your property to store the extra hunting equipment, or maybe just to turn around and put that freezer in for all the meat that you've got, check out Colorado Sheds. They also do pole barns and can do custom manufacturing to whatever your heart desires. She sheds, man caves, it doesn't matter. Check out coloradosheds.com.
The other thing about South Park, we did a ton of fish work, which is kind of the unsung hero.
So they get all the Dream Stream, the reservoirs, Spinney and Antero and Let Mile.
Right, and that's the part of the at times part of the agency that kind of maybe doesn't get the toot their horn as much. But when I moved to South Park, I got to work with he was an aquatic biologist, Rod Van Velsen, who was out of Fort Collins, and he was kind of the stream biologist, and he was working on stream improvement projects. And Rod was the greatest guy in the world, great, and he would teach you, and you could ask the dumbest question, and he was more. In fact, you'd ask the dumb question more than once, and he'd always answer you and give you the reasons. And so Rod did a bunch of work down on the South Fork of the South Platte, where we would help him, and whether it was willow plantings or we go out be shocking and trying to do samples to see if that work was working. And then Rod passed the baton to Matt Kondratieff. So now Matt is actually a stream biologist, and Matt has done a bunch of work now around the state. That's the bummer part. They found out how good Kondratieff was or is, and so now they have him going to different parts of the state. So he's not down in South Park all the time, but been blessed with great fish biologists. And with that fishery resource down there, like you said, the Dream Stream, just a lot of the Middle Fork of the South Platte, just the reservoirs themselves, Spinney, 11 Mile, just Antero, just an incredible fishery. So sometimes those folks don't get the credit that they deserve. So
did you use the Chalk Cliffs hatchery from there, or was it somewhere else?
We would use Chalk Cliffs, Chavanaux, Rifle, and Pueblo. So we would get fish from just about all those hatcheries. But yeah, the guys, like I said, and it was always fun to go ahead and go and shock. Just the timing was always kind of tough because usually in October when they wanted to shock, we were chasing the orange guys around. So trying to juggle that at times could be difficult. So
Did you bow hunt?
I did not bow hunt.
No?
Nope. I would love to, but I just didn't have the time. Maybe now I can. So
If you get away from the honeydews, you might have a chance to be able to do it.
there's a long list.
Yeah.
So, but it's okay. It keeps me out of trouble. So that's all good.
So as you were working your way up through the rank and file of things, and did you have aspirations? I mean, you say when you got into Fairplay, you weren't going to stay there forever. Did you have some place that you would have rather been at the time, and then realizing that, well, you did the right choice anyway, but I mean, some place that you aspired to try to get to?
In fact, it's kind of funny. I was just telling this to someone the other day, that many years ago, the AWM position in Montrose had opened up. And so I was really interested in Montrose. And at the time, my wife, who worked with Forest Service, she's retired now too. But there was a position in Montrose that had opened up, and she was a range con. And that range con position had opened. So would have been kind of a nice move for us. And so we kind of thought about it, but I didn't get the job. which it comes back to what you just said. It actually worked out better because then we stayed in Fairplay, had our kids, and then worked out better where I became a supervisor in AWM in Area 1. So that actually worked out better for us. So, but now, like I said, being over in Craig, I never thought I'd leave South Park. 'Cause just like Jonesy said, it kind of grows on you, and but it's a nice change. So it's good. I'm happy with what we
Just the traffic flow and being 2 hours out of Denver, the Denverite mentality, whether it's summer homes or just people driving up there because they can commute back and forth, or just the close proximity to the big city has got to be different than what it would have been 25 years ago.
or the leaf peepers.
Yes.
Like this weekend was horrendous from what I heard.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I did a bunch of training for our training academy. And when our portion of the training would happen, I would tend to come home after training. We'd train all day, and then I just slept better in my own bed than sleeping in a hotel. And I would leave about 5 in the morning, maybe 5:30. And when I would be commuting on the 285, I would see those same vehicles in the morning, people commuting to Denver from, just like you said, from South Park.
Yeah.
So people were definitely doing that commute, and it was just like,
Didn't used to be that way.
no,
Not at all.
no.
I mean, people that were in South Park stayed in South Park. And that's why Fairplay didn't. That's why it took so long for Fairplay to grow up. I remember going through Alma in I mean, there was like 4 people in Alma. Now it's a little sidebar deal to where people that live in Alma typically go over the top of Hoosier Pass and work. The traffic flow. I came up from Canyon this morning, and the traffic flow now is 50 times different than what it used to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely different. Yeah, between Alma and Fairplay, no doubt.
Yeah.
So
Do you have a particular mentor that you grew up around that got you into this? That this is you laugh about it, but it sounds like
you're gonna laugh. You're gonna laugh when you hear this. So I grew up. I used to tease people when they said, "Well, where are you from?" And I used to tell them, "Well, if I tell you, I'm gonna have to kill you," because I actually grew up in New York. And a lot of times people hear in New York and they go, "Oh God," and they turn you off. And that's one of the reasons I didn't want to tell them where I was from, because I go, "Oh, this guy's from freaking New York." But I grew up, had a great family, but Sundays, Mutual Omaha, Wild Kingdom.
Oh yeah.
And
Marlon Perkins.
yeah, but I didn't want to be Marlon. I wanted to be Jim.
Yeah, you want to be Jim.
I
wanted to wrestle shit.
Exactly. I wanted to be on the alligator, or I wanted to be on the rhino's back.
You wanted Marlon to be talking about you. It's like, now Jim's kind of having a little bit of a hassle there with that crocodile.
So that was kind of my hook into, and I always said I wanted to work with wildlife. Yeah, I wanted to work with wildlife. So when I was in high school, the high school I went to really geared people to either business, or they became policemen, firemen. That was really the kind of the gear. And so when I tried to apply to Coble Skill, I didn't have some of the science stuff I needed initially, but they accepted me in the ag program, and I was able to get in the fish and wildlife program. And then up there, I worked on a pheasant project. We did a ton. Like I said, we only had 20 kids in the wildlife program. So you were in the limelight. You didn't get to hide in your classes like you could at CSU. And anyway, I had great profs there, and yeah, that was kind of got me going to go to Colorado. And then my mentors, probably the guys that I really looked up to were another one you might laugh at, but when I was at Arapahoe National Wildlife Refuge, every once in a while the refuge manager would say, "Hey, come over tonight. We're going to have barbecue, and Terry Gross is going to be there."
Oh, really?
And so I can't tell you how many times Terry would come to the refuge, and we'd sit and have a beer and have a steak, and Terry would tell Terry stories that you just went, "Holy cow!" And then Steve Porter, who was up there, was the DWM in North Park. Like I said, did some ride-alongs with him, and that was pretty much the hook.
Really?
Like, this is good stuff. So got to trap elk one season. I was trapping elk for DOW, and that was probably the continuation. Had met some of the big game researchers, as they were called at the time, and so that was kind of this is the angle I want to go.
That's where you wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did you ever do anything with the feds as far as Fort Carson, Pinyon Canyon, or U.S.
Nope.
Fish and Wildlife Service?
No, just other than working on the wildlife refuge,
Yeah.
and the guys that I had worked with on the refuge at the time, trying to get hired was pretty tough. And usually the way to get your foot in the door was you became a clerk typist, and for a year, and then once your foot was in the door, then you could lateral over to an assistant refuge manager or biological technician or
Really?
whatever. So I had two friends. That's the angle they went. But my door opened to DOW before that happened. So and then when that door opened, I wasn't gonna let it hit me in the butt and turn it down. So
When you first got the job as a district wildlife manager, do you remember what your pay was?
I don't remember the actual amount, but it was not very much. And that's the thing about this job that has changed dramatically. Is that one? I knew getting in this job I wasn't going to get rich. I knew there was going to be long hours. My wife knew it was going to be long hours. My wife knew it was going to be weekends, holidays. That was the job, And so when you see the change that has happened with but just people in general, that heart for the job isn't there like it used to be. They're still there, but not
Some of those guys, and I'll speak frankly, but a lot of those guys have been there 15, 20, 25 years. A lot of the new ones that I've seen don't necessarily have that, what I call ride for the brand. It's 40 hours and this is my job. It's not my livelihood. It doesn't define who I am. It allows me to make a living.
Correct. And that's a tough thing for some of us retirees to
Oh,
say,
yeah.
because most of us did ride for the brand. And like I mentioned, I definitely have, I have drank the DOW Kool-Aid. I'll tell you where I sit before where I stand, and I will support that agency, CPW now, as much as I can. Do I agree with everything that CPW does? Absolutely not. But
Either do we.
yeah.
Not everybody. I mean, there's because there's segments that you just have to question, but you have to be involved in the conversations or in the management decisions to make sure that your voice is heard.
Correct.
But I think that's the same thing internally.
Right. And so majority of the people now, I think, do ride for the brand, but there's still a pretty good segment that, like you said, it's a job. 40 hours, I'm done. And why do I have to work all these weekends? And it's like, well, that's when our constituents.
Well, and I got to say too, that since the merge, there's been a difference optically. If anybody's paid attention and they interact with it at all, there's been a difference because of the parks and the wildlife side. Not everybody thinks this way, but there's a different mentality on the parks and the wildlife side. And some of that has to do with certification. Some of that has to do with institutional knowledge. Some of that has to do with you're on the park and we're on the landscape. You deal with the park. We deal with the public, unless they're on the park. We deal with landowners. We deal with this. We deal with 961 species of wildlife that is on the park and off the park and on public and private. And from what I've seen, that's created a level of dissension or divisiveness that I don't think was intended through the merge.
Oh, definitely not intended. And I'll tell you, I was hesitant with the merger, and there's some great park people out there. There are some people that ride for the brand.
Yep.
They really do. But they're in the same boat. I mean, they have some stuff that they kind of go, huh? And they kind of see things kind of the same as us. We're kind of looking at those 961 species, and they're looking at the park. So there's some differences there, but I think it's gotten better. But there's definitely still some differences between
Yeah.
parks and wildlife, and that's one of those things that, you know, the public has a really hard time, because we were told initially and still that wildlife money, parks money, two separate bank accounts. They don't do this. And there's still a lot of people that go, well, you're in trouble because parks is stealing all your money, and they're not supposed to be able to steal our money.
Yeah.
And we're not supposed to be able to steal their money.
So that has to do with the Dingell Johnson Pittman-Robertson side of it as well.
Exactly.
Where anybody that's listening to this, that once you start crossing the line on that excise tax and it doesn't go to the appropriate pot, the feds will jump in and say, you know, they might slap your hand, but more than not, they're going to turn around and knock the crap out of you because you can't do that.
Well, back in the early 90s, the feds audited some Pittman-Robertson funding, and they discovered that several of the parks that had become parks, those lands have been purchased with Pittman-Robertson money. And so I can't give you the statewide perspective, but I know in South Park, we were able to acquire Reineke Ridge and Mud Springs. Reineke Ridge, which was 12,000 acres, and Mud Springs, which was another 6,000 acres. We were able to acquire that because parks at the time said, we can't pay you money, but we'll give you properties. And so they went through this whole evaluation process and appraisals. And so we, in South Park, we acquired those two parcels, which are now the James Mark Jones State Wildlife Area. So that was kind of a screw up with Pittman-Robertson money, PR money. Right. So, and we benefited from that because, I mean, that, at least down in Area 1 in South Park, that was a great coup because that was our key wintering ground for elk. So that's where we sucked all our elk. We try to get all our elk in the wintertime. So
you remember, Mark, when you got hired, you got any idea how many parks there were?
No. I remember Cherry Creek and Chatfield.
Because you were never part of any merge of parks back then.
No.
Because parks was in wildlife before, then they took it out.
Correct.
But the merge that we're talking about didn't happen until 2011, 2012.
Correct, yeah, and I couldn't. I know I did a lot with Cherry Creek because that was in my Aurora district, so I did a lot with the folks at the park there, but that and Castlewood Canyon, which was a little sleeper at the time, now has developed into a pretty substantial park.
We're talking about Pittman-Robertson and Dingell Johnson. Pittman-Robertson Act was initiated in the late 1930s.
Correct, I think 37.
Yeah, and that was done through the federal legislature. And sportsmen and women went to the legislature at that time to create a self-imposed tax. I think it's around 11%. I think it's always been 11%, to tax themselves on firearms and ammunition and shooting-related accoutrements that was done at the manufacturer level, not at the state level or the end-user level. And then that money, in turn, went back to the federal government. And then that money was then distributed back to the states based upon license sales and residents within the state.
Correct.
Colorado's cut of that last year, I think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of around $36 million. If that's in total, I'm not sure, but it's in the 30s to $40 million range. Dingell Johnson came out in the 1950, and that's on fishing, sport fishing and equipment and so forth. Now, both of those funds had earmarks to them to some degree. I mean, the states couldn't just do what they wanted to. When the money went to the feds and then was distributed back to the states. So, as an example, Colorado might kick in X amount of dollars, but even if they kicked in $50 million, it doesn't mean that they're going to get $50 million back because of the sales of those accessories and so forth. That was not anything that each state was capable of deciding on what they did with it before they sent it. but it was all determined on how much was sold within their state boundaries and then how it went to the federal side of things. What you're referencing as Pittman-Robertson, Dingell-Johnson, land acquisitions were part of this equation, not as much now as what they were previously, but a lot of the wildlife-related type things that went on as far as studies and enhancements and habitat and so forth came from those.
Cheap PR.
But it needs to be emphasized that a significant amount on the Pittman-Robertson side of things is from recreational shooters because of firearms and ammunition and accessories.
Absolutely correct. That's right. And back in the day, I can think of a couple of wildlife areas in Area 1 that had federal dollars tied to those acquisitions, because we had people wanting to try to get a little piece of it. It was tough to manage for us because it was just about a 10-acre piece that really wasn't tied to the main property, but trying to jump through some of those hoops were almost impossible to try to get rid of that 10 acres, and it was all tied to PR funds.
There was also components that played into fee title acquisition and land acquisitions, but then a lot of the states ended up addressing that stuff on their own through habitat partnerships, or like Colorado has for the habitat stamp. And it was the intent to be able to create that mechanism for land management, whether it was acquired or acquisitioned or not, and getting people to understand the crossover between money. Pittman-Robertson and Dingell-Johnson, according to the way it's set up, could not go to the park side.
Correct.
It could not go to the park side of what we have here. Now, back in the day, there might have been, like you said, park money that was acquired through Pittman-Robertson or Dingell-Johnson, but then went to the wildlife side of it. But can you explain, to the best of your knowledge, you had 18 areas in the state, 4 regions. Did you apply for money that came in, or was that just in general fund money and you said we needed to turn around and do this?
Yeah, that and those decisions where the PR funds would come in were above us. So if I was looking at trying to do an acquisition of some kind or an easement of some kind, as it went up the food chain, and it started getting to the financial folks, the bean counters, they would try to figure out where and how much money was available from PR to put into that pot of money. And initially what happened was when we were, I don't know if we were Parks, Fish and Game at that time, but when they split and parks were created out of some of those old properties, those were properties that were where PR funds had been used unknowingly. It wasn't done intentionally.
Right.
But that's kind of where that happened. That was ages ago, and it took that many years for the feds to finally go, "Hey, we're going to audit this and look at where these monies went."
And I didn't mean to cut you off earlier.
No, not at all.
But the number of parks that were around when you got, I mean, it's probably half of what we have now.
Oh, correct. And there's still a push for more parks.
Right.
And the concern is, that parks are struggling with infrastructure now, trying to get things because of the demand on parks, trying to get the infrastructure up to where it can meet capacities now is still struggling.
Well, I mean, I've got a criticism, and I didn't think it was a good idea at the time, and it's not been too long ago, but to keep Colorado Wild Pass. You turn around and get the registration component. Well, that's a great deal if you can use the park. But I've had dozens and dozens and dozens of people that turn around and did that on 2 or 3 vehicles to support it, and then they can't get a reservation at the park because there's not enough supply for the demand that there is when you turn around and generate $36 or $40 million off license plate sales for a registration, thinking that everybody's going to turn around and be able to use one of those state parks at peak times. You might be able to go there on the week, but try to do it on Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, or any of the summertime. Those are not, the infrastructure is not set up for the amount of licenses or the amount of registrations that they're selling at this point.
And thus the push for more parks, right?
Exactly.
To try to meet that demand.
Exactly.
So, and that's, when COVID hit, even prior to COVID, that's when we started working on the state wildlife areas, because people, when the merger happened, a state park or a state wildlife area was the same thing to a lot of people in the general public. And so we really had to do an educational effort on their different animals. And wildlife areas are treated differently, they're managed differently.
They're paid for.
And they're paid for differently, which was the big push, is that.
So there's about 350 state wildlife areas in the state.
Correct.
most of all, maybe not in the day, but most of all that money comes from sportsman dollars.
Yep.
And they were managed, they were acquired and managed for consumptive use opportunities. Now maybe it's wildlife watching or whatever, but it wasn't intended to use it like a state park.
Correct. It was intended for wildlife management, wildlife recreation. That was the intention of the wildlife areas. And so that was the big push on trying to update, as we called it, Chapter 9 in our regulations, which is...
You and I sat on both committee together.
So trying to get that updated, and it was, as you saw, we had pretty big stakeholder group and went real well, but there were some uphill battles.
But there's a lot of people in that whole process, and I'm referencing this because it brings us into modern day conversation to where we're at now. But there was a lot of people sat on that they couldn't comprehend why something was going to be created for a state wildlife area access pass that they had to buy when that was state park. And it wasn't state park, but you couldn't get it through their thick skull that this stuff was acquired for sportsmen and women.
By sportsmen
and women. And there's park stuff over here, but they didn't want to pay for the access on the sportsmen and women. And remember, they actually wanted to even change the accessibility or the requirements of that, so they could turn around and use it for their own particular wants and desires.
So we got it to the finish line, and I don't know. Yeah, we got it to the finish line. We'll just put it there.
There was a lot of arm wrestling at the time, and I'm glad that we got it done when we did, because under the current political makeup with the commission, it might have been a little bit more tumultuous now than what it was then. And depending on whose ideologies that were brought to the table.
Correct. Yeah, the political climate, you asked about when I started and now, the politics and the political climate, a lot different. A lot more involvement from the politics side of things now than surely back in 1987.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt that's a tough thing for, I think, the field. I think it's a tough time for people in the agency, just trying to do their jobs, yet having the big brother looking over their shoulder on what they're doing.
A lot of that's happened significantly in the last 7 years, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Do you recall a time in your career where it was as blatant as what it has been since the last 7 years?
No, not even close. Not even close. I remember when they were discussing Two Forks, and I remember we had just kayaked the Platte.
And as a reference, what Two Forks was?
Oh, Two Forks was a dam that Denver Water was proposing, where the North Fork of the South Platte and the South Platte come together, and they're going to dam this canyon and create this huge reservoir. And so I remember John, my supervisor, John Bradioff, and I just finished kayaking, and so you were kind of in your shorts and you had your spray skirt and literally putting the kayaks in the back of the truck, and here comes this convertible Mustang in with Bruce Springsteen playing, and here's Governor Romer, and I kid you not, Bruce Springsteen was playing. It was something out of, like, you got to be kidding me. So he asked us, well, you guys tell me, what's your thoughts on Two Forks? So I gave him the company answer. And I remember John going, "Tell him the truth." So I said, okay. So I told him the truth, and John told him the truth, and we were both kind of against Two Forks. And I think it was the next day he announced, Two Forks is going to go through.
Oh, really?
And I remember seeing my boss going, "I guess we didn't do a good enough job convincing Governor Romer, huh?" My introduction to politics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when you got to see firsthand that boots on the ground experience doesn't necessarily trump anything, but you got politicians or other people that want it more than what you do. Who was the easiest governor to work for?
See, early in my career, I just didn't have to deal with any of that. I just kind of...
Even from the trickle-down political side of things.
Romer was easy. I think there was some times when the energy development was pretty tough on the field.
Uh-huh.
So I think sometimes that realm, when Owens was in, it was kind of tough because you were starting to see that oil and gas stuff being pushed. And it's kind of interesting now because I look at some of the energy development things being proposed now, and maybe oil and gas was really tough at the time, but maybe from all the pushing and all the headbanging that we did with the oil and gas, you look at that now and it's not as impactful as it used to be. Now with directional drilling and you almost see more of an impact from some of the green energy to wildlife than there is from oil and gas. And I never thought I'd say that in my career, that,
So like solar and wind and everything?
solar and wind, yeah. I mean, the footprint is incredible. And I remember talking to my brother, who lives in upstate New York, and we got talking about solar stuff, and I was telling him how tough solar can be just because of the huge footprint that it can create. And we got in this discussion, and he was like, no, solar's not bad. Solar's great. And he went through, and so then he finally realized that he was talking about solar on top of your house. And I was talking about solar farms, like hundreds of acres, thousands of acres of panels. And he goes, you don't have those. And I said, yeah, we do.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, we do. And I go, they're killing wildlife. So he just couldn't conceive that was out there. And then when I brought up the wind energy and the impact of windmills and turbines, he just couldn't conceive it. Just
Really?
couldn't picture that, And I remember standing out in one of the turbines, went in the wind fields, and just listening to those turbines go, and just the size was unbelievable. And one had exploded. And I remember seeing that top of I don't know what it's called, but the top piece of that wind turbine was the size of a Winnebago. It was now on the ground, but incredible. And I was just going, man, just look at there's 100 of these things.
Yes.
And you start looking at the impact to the prairie chickens, and it was like, wow, just so it's
We did some work out southeast of Walsenburg 6 or 10 years ago, somewhere in there. And the amount of birds of prey that had been struck and killed, there was literally people walking around picking up dead birds every day.
right.
And bats.
And bats.
I mean, they killed a hell of a lot of bats. And I was enamored with the fact that people thought that was green. There was a lot of stuff that died.
Right. I don't think folks realize that's, the green energy isn't as green as we think it is. It makes us feel good, and trying to get rid of some of the other stuff that's out there. But I think we need to be pretty wise on what we're doing with our energy development and what we're using. So,
Who's your most favorite director to work with?
let's see. I think it was kind of funny that at the division office, they have a wall with all the directors.
Yep.
And right before I retired, I kind of went in the wall and went 1, 2, 3. So I was 10 directors, and I probably have a bias just because I went through training with them, but Prenslow is probably my fave, just like I said. And then Dan and I didn't agree on a lot. Not a lot. We didn't agree on everything.
Well, it's Prenslow.
But it's Prenslow, yeah.
It's a bit-
But Dan was good, and I remember when
if you watch this, there's no hard feelings. So
I remember when I moved to Fairplay, Perry Olson was the director at the time, and one of the local politicians, the assessor, has said to me, "Hey, come to the Lincoln dinner. I'll introduce you to your representative, and it'll be a good way for you to meet Representative Ken Klober, who was a Republican." And I was unaffiliated purposefully, and so okay. So I go to the Republican dinner, and I see Dave, and we're talking. He goes, "Let me go introduce you to Representative Klober." So I go walking up, and he goes, "Ken, this is Mark Lamm. He's our new wildlife officer down here." We start shaking hands, and he goes, "I just need you to know that Perry Olson is an effing a-hole." And I'm shaking this guy's hand, and he's calling my boss an effing a-hole. First time I meet the guy, and I'm just like, ay. So he goes, "Oh, we love you guys, but man, your administration, So that was my introduction to South Park politics. So, which
did you know Jack Grebe?
I did not know Jack Reeb.
No.
No. Roosh was the
Okay.
was the director when I got hired.
Okay.
So
Do you think that the relationship with Division of Wildlife then, because they went through some tough times. I mean, there was more old school traditionalist, as far as the sportsman and ag community. Do you think it was tough then compared to what it is now, or do you think that this wolf deal has created a very tumultuous landscape.
I think it really ebbs and flows, just like everything. But the wolf is really blown up. And I've said this. I mean, if Jeff Davis could actually be a director, he's a hell of a good guy. I think he's.
You rode around with him a couple times.
Yeah. In fact, one of the things I didn't get to do before I retired was he wanted to do a ride along, and we just ran out of time. He was actually on leave, probably a well-deserved leave that we just couldn't make it work. But just good guy, pretty savvy, but he needs to be able to do his job, which right now he's not being able to direct, which is kind of tough. And it kind of bums me when I hear people bad-mouthing Davis and Davis this and Davis that. And it's like, if you knew the other side of the story, guy's a good guy. He just hasn't had the chance to do his job. So and he knew what he was getting into.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
So that part I can't say anything, but Davis is a good dude. So
the manipulation that we see now is not anything that I can remember as a volunteer or an outsider playing with the inside politics that I could remember in any way, shape, or form.
No, you're right on there. It's the tentacles are out there, and the tentacles have grown without a doubt. And they're almost not as, it used to be. It almost seemed like the folks pushing some of that agenda were, trying to do it pretty low key. Not anymore. I mean, it's like in your face.
In your face.
So it's it's that part is totally different.
So you're retired unless they're going to turn around and steal your pension from you or something. I mean, give us a rundown of how you saw that chain of command or the protocol. Because I mean, I just look at it from a, and I wasn't in the military, but from a military standpoint, you had district wildlife managers, and then you had area wildlife managers, and not until most recently did you have very many assistant area wildlife managers. It was you. I mean, you might have had some support staff, but now it seems like there's a hell of a lot of chiefs at different positions. So if you went from a district manager to an area wildlife manager to a regional manager, and then it branched into other forms of the administrative side of things. And obviously things have changed from the executive management team down to the leadership team. And how the hell does the chain of command work today? Because and I'm not trying to trap you here.
No.
I'm trying to understand, as big as the agency has become, with the amount of species that we've got, with the amount of people that we've got, with the intent, the mission has changed a little bit, but just because of the amount of people. Are we doing the right thing for wildlife and habitat? Are we putting too much emphasis on the people side of it and the social side of it?
Well, and that's, so kind of that structure that you talked about, not only do you have district wildlife managers, but you have wildlife technicians down, kind of the boots on the ground, doing all the really hard work. And then you have now an assistant area wildlife manager, and then we now have the assistant regional managers, which is another step to regional manager.
And you might have two of those. I think each area has two.
Yeah, so what we did in Area 1, we actually looked at doing an assistant, which hadn't happened when I left, but they're working on it right now. But we actually put in for what we call a wildlife technician 5, which would be a supervisory position for technicians, because they kind of got to a tech 4 and kind of dead-ended. And it was really hard for a tech to try to move up the food chain, so to speak. So we were able to work with the HR department and the other AWMs. We all kind of schemed together on how to come up with that.
Right.
And so we actually do have a wildlife technician in Area 5, I think, or Area 1, or we're the first area, or Area 1 was the first area in the state to get that. And they're working on the assistant area wildlife manager. So you'll have those two and then the AWM. And I'll be honest, I mean, my last probably 2 years, maybe even 3 years, I hardly got to spend any time with my guys, just because you're so busy. Part of it, my own doing, because I had my fingers in a lot of things trying to get some stuff done, and but you're just overwhelmed. And when I was, right before I came an AWM, I actually I coached, I was the assistant high school basketball coach in South Park for boys. And then I became the girls' head coach after a while. And I had to give that up. It was something I had really enjoyed, but I had to give it up just because my schedule just didn't, my schedule was being created for me as a supervisor. So I couldn't make that commitment to the team. So I had like I said, that was a tough thing for me to give up because you really do enjoy and got in the school, got in with the kids. And so that was kind of, like I said, a tough thing. But as you move up the food chain, just tougher to get things done without a doubt.
Well, it just seems like I remember the day when the Colorado Springs office, as an example, literally the entire office had, I mean, that was the southeast region.
On Weber Street.
Yeah, on Weber. That had less people in that than you have in your area, in Area 1. I mean, so that's an area versus a region. I mean, I knew everybody in there. And it just morphed into something to where, and I joke about this, but I'm trying to dissect some of this. Some of it has to do with people and perspectives, but a lot of the game wardens have become people managers more, or at least as much as what they do wildlife managers.
And part of that has come down now to some of the, not in my wheelhouse, but some of the span of control. How many people can you supervise properly, successfully, mentor? And this span of control has become a very big issue statewide, not just in CPW, but trying to make sure that people are being mentored properly. So that's where some of these new positions, these mid-levels, are being created to help with that span of control. Like Mark Leslie, the regional manager in the Northeast, I mean, he was overseeing two assistant regional managers, 5 AWMs, and I think it was like 14 park managers. So he was supervising like 20 people. And I mean, you just can't do it effectively.
But he's got district wildlife managers in there.
Well, the AWMs would take care of the district wildlife
okay.
managers.
Okay.
But I mean, it's just, and like I had 8 district wildlife managers and 4 technicians, and myself and Matt Martinez in Area 5, we split an admin. So I had 12 and a half people. Like I said, my last 2-3 years, I used to want to go out and ride with the guys, a day or two. Never got to do it.
Never got a chance.
Never got to do it. Just too busy. So
do you think that's a benefit to the actual job? I mean, like the actual resource itself?
It's a benefit to the guys that you didn't bother them for a whole day. You know, they didn't get the.
Yeah.
But as far as what you were asking, though, is it affecting the wildlife management part? Probably to some extent, because you have people that have been maybe pulled out of the field that are spending more time. But I know one of the things I preached as a supervisor was, and my guys gave me a very hard time about it, was I always said habitat. That was the key. And I always wanted to see habitat projects. And when grants came up and funding mechanisms came up, I wanted to see projects come in, because I'd rather have them trying to get those kind of projects done than going out and buying whatever. So the guys I worked with were very successful in trying to get habitat projects. And even if it was just removing a fence and putting a more wildlife-friendly fence in, just something to help wildlife. So I know from my standpoint, that was a pretty important factor to what I was preaching to my team, without a doubt. And so my guys definitely knew that was central to what we needed to be doing as on-the-ground wildlife managers. And that bought you the credibility with the public. It made you deal with producers, right? Livestock operators, because a lot of times the wildlife areas are adjacent to ranches.
Yeah.
And so whether it was an actual producer or a wealthy person that had a ranch, trying to do those things where you're on the same page was pretty important.
Did you think that when you first started, did you think that the state of the state when it comes to wildlife management would end up where it is when you finally stepped your last step with a badge and a gun?
Never. I wanted to be Jim Fowler, wrestle the alligator, and not worry about politics. That was my naivety about what wildlife management really was. And once you kind of get into it, you really do see wildlife is in the spotlight, in the politics, in the frying pan. And it's navigating that properly for the benefit of wildlife. And we were pretty successful, I think. My group. I mean, we had several acquisitions. We had some easements that went through, public access easements. So I think we were doing pretty good stuff for wildlife and trying to help the sportsmen and sportswomen in the long run. So, and as well as wildlife, got some pretty good properties. So,
Do you think that people in the ag industry, the producers that you've known most of your career, that they felt like, I'm not putting words in your mouth or anybody else's mouth, but they felt like that they got betrayed by the agency to this wolf introduction deal? Or do they actually realize that you guys didn't have squat to do with it? You just had to enforce it.
well, I think initially they felt that. They felt betrayed. And then I think by the field folks going out and actually talking to people, and I think it got better. But where the problem persists is the continuation of the bashing of CPW on the wolf program, that you guys can't do anything right. You guys can't do anything right. And so it gives the agency a black eye. And, it's I hate to say it, but really the field folks are the ones suffering the most.
Well, they got to deal with the people.
Because they're on the ground. And, if it wasn't for the field, you wouldn't have some of the things we have. Like, hey, I need to go pick up a deer collar. I need to go pick up an elk collar. Hey, I want to do something. I want to go do a sage grouse leg count. If it wasn't for the relationship with the field and those owners, that wouldn't be happening. And so some of the wolf stuff has really been pretty tough on the field folks. And I'm thinking about even down my way when we had a wolf at one time run through South Park, and we started calling producers. I mean, it was like, hey, just FYI. And we tried to be as upfront and give them as much information as we could. And we always ended the conversation with, you need to remember, someday down the road, we won't have collars. We're not going to know where they're at. But right now, we have an idea where this wolf is at. And so I think that was really super beneficial. And some of the secrecy involved with the wolf thing, I totally understand, because the people that are out there that want to see them are sometimes, they do stupid stuff, and they'll go trespass on private property, or they'll go do whatever they want because they want to go see a wolf. So I can get, trying to keep it somewhat quiet, but I think it was pretty important for us to be talking to producers to be able to give them the heads up that, hey, here's what's here. So the wolf thing definitely set the agency back as far as relations.
Yes.
So, and part of that too, I'm glad I'm retired, because I'll say this now, but and part of that is just from the, up above, the agency. And
if the agency was allowed to do what they needed to do, not what they wanted to do, what they needed to do, things would have gone a little bit easier.
I think so, and it's kind of that Monday morning quarterback thing.
Oh, yeah.
And that's I hate being a Monday morning quarterback, and kind of the way I try to look at things is that, okay, here's where we're at. Where do we go from here? How do we make things better now? So I think that's really what the agency needs to be doing now, is how do we step forward? How do we kind of mend some bridges that we maybe kind of burned unintentionally? So that's what I think. If I could tell the agency or ask the agency to do something, it's like move forward in a more open way. And like I said, the pressure from up above is just crazy.
Who'd have ever thought that it got to that point?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Like I said, being a whatever I was, 20-year-old kid when I came out to Colorado, thinking, hey, I want to work with wildlife, and I never thought that we'd be where we're at now.
If you had a crystal ball 20 years ago, knowing what you know now, what would you have recommended to do differently on the wolf deal if you had any say whatsoever at the time?
Probably just being a little more open with what was going on. I think I understand some of the need for secrecy, just because both sides of the issue. The thing, and this is the other thing that keeps kind of giving the agency a black eye, CPW, you did this. You did this. We didn't do it. Or CPW didn't do it. The voters did it. And so CPW is taking this black eye for introducing wolves. It's not their fault. I mean, talk to the Front Range, right? So they're by law mandated to put wolves out. And here's what the law says. And that's what they're trying to do. And so I think just maybe on the front end was maybe be a little more open on what was going on and what was going to go on. And then it always comes down to, well, you told him, but you didn't tell him. So
Or two people got two different stories.
Right. So that's kind of I think that tough thing. And I'm not trying to waffle on this by any means.
Oh, I know. And I'm not trying to get you to throw anybody out with the bathwater, but these conversations, one of the things that we've been able to build off of with the podcast is the fact that legislators and county commissioners and wildlife commissioners and producers themselves, the general public, has found it interesting when we discuss some of these things a little bit more in depth, because what they've said more often than not is they get into a hearing room or an opportunity to testify and they hear a minute and a half from somebody. And the 30 seconds of that takes them to introduce themselves. I'm Joe Blow from such and such, then I'm here to talk about, well, then you're done. And the people that we've talked to about giving them an hour and a half and getting into the weeds on some of this stuff, I think it helps paint a different picture, especially if people go back and listen to some of the other podcasts that we've done, some of the other episodes with producers and people that are boots on the ground. Martin Lowney was a great example of that. Martin, came from the federal side, which worked with the state side, which worked with the Department of Ag side. And if it would have all went like Martin had said it should have went, that he had no control over, it would have been a lot better. But he calls out not just things that he had involvement with, but things that they made sure that he or the agency didn't have involvement with. And I think that in itself creates confusion or maybe criticism or scrutiny from the general public back to the agency. But it goes back to, it's not all about the agency.
Right.
The politics have gotten so intertwined and undermined with this whole deal that I'm concerned of how things will be 5 or 10 or 15 years from now. Because if this sort of management continually is allowed to move forward, in all reality, why do you need Parks and Wildlife? And then you look at that Initiative 98, which why do you need Parks and Wildlife?
Right, and that's definitely the push. And then it's to get rid of that consumptive use, wise use conservation model, North American model, out the door, right? And I kind of chuckle when I always chuckled from the start with the comparison to Yellowstone. Yellowstone this, Colorado's not Yellowstone. You can never use that comparison. I always just wanted to choke when I heard that.
It's like going to McDonald's and saying, well, it's just like Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not.
So anyway.
Do you think that the number one thing that you saw that you could have intervened in your tenure that maybe would have made a difference? Doesn't have to be wolves, just to where you had the opportunity when the time was right for a wildlife management decision to turn around and say, we need to do this differently, and I should have, or I could have directed that a little bit more appropriately. And it goes into a changing landscape too, because the state changed while you were growing and while you were going from position to position.
I don't know if I can put my finger on one thing that I wish I had done this. At times I think about maybe just, and it's not even wildlife management related, it's probably more people management, where I wish I had got to spend more time with my guys, my team, just because that's where great ideas were kind of being created, a great scheming when we'd be out kind of trying to figure things out, or, sitting waiting for a spotlighter or something. So I don't know if I have a good answer for that one, Dan.
What about Mark, your the inner working relationship with federal agencies, whether it's Forest Service, BLM, Wildlife Services, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service? I mean, there's a disconnect at different levels when you get in to the federal, the state side. Is there something that sticks in your mind that could have helped either patch wounds or make something better?
Well, now that you bring up the federal side of things, there were definitely times where we would have hoped we could have gotten a habitat project done for wildlife with the Forest Service or even the BLM. Well, probably more with the Forest Service because we had more Forest Service lands, but their focus got put to that urban interface of timber management. So anything that wasn't at that urban interface probably wasn't going to happen.
Really?
Yeah, and so one of the guys, Ian Petcash, kind of challenged him to. He was trying to do a sheep project, and I was like, "We'll figure it out. Let's get a timber guy." So he was able to convince a Forest Service timber guy to come out and gave what he was hoping to do for bighorn sheep. And that timber guy gave him a few ideas, and he goes, "Well, here's what we came up with." And he goes, "I need money." And it was like, "Well, let's go find money." So he went out and found money, and I think 3 years. The first year was a really scary year for him, but then he had successful 2 years after that where we had this awesome yearly project that was going on in the Terrials for bighorn sheep.
Really?
And it was all on Forest Service, and because the Forest Service couldn't do anything because their emphasis was other places. But the NEPA had already been done, the National Environmental Policy Act's requirement of doing things beforehand. You can do projects. That had all been completed for another project that then got put on the back burner. So we got lucky with that aspect of it. So, but it was once again one of those habitat things. Let's go do some things. So, maybe a little more pressure on the Forest Service side of things to try to do some more habitat work. So maybe that's something that I could have done a better job with, but or been a little more persistent. So everyone always teased me because my wife was a Fed, and they'd always say, "Oh, well, you got the in with the Feds," and it was like, "Nah."
Yeah. Not that Feds. Not that.
So
and I'm asking off the wall questions here for a variety of different reasons because, people look at the agency that in all reality, when you got hired in 86, 87, how many people work there?
Oh, there are 100 and I think there were 120, 140 DWMs. Now I think there's close to 200. So there have been more people hired probably in the last 3-4 years, and I'm not counting all the pollinator people now. I'm just like, but last 3-4 years than probably the rest of my career total.
Really?
Yeah. So
it's just like 1,100 seasonal and 1,100 permanent full-time employees.
Yeah, we always had problems trying to find seasonals on the wildlife side of things. So, but just permanent employee wise, yeah, there's been a lot of hires lately. So
somebody wants to get in and be a game warden today, and just walked up to you and said, "Man, I really want to be a game warden." What would you tell them?
You sure?
Yeah. Are you sure?
No, but
in Colorado.
but in all honesty, I mean, it's one of those. If someone did ask that, I would ask them, "You're sure you want to do it?" Because it's a commitment, and
because it should be because you like to hunt,
right? And in fact, I used to love to fish. I don't like to fish anymore. So because all I did, especially in my first 5 years, all I did was check fishermen. So I really got burnt out on fishing because I'd go out and fish and be busy watching this guy and busy watching that guy and just didn't fish. Or too busy watching everybody.
And you know what I'm seeing right now is I'm seeing new hires or people, trainees that have been hired that don't hunt, have never hunted. And then I've seen guys that the reason they got in because they loved wildlife and loved to hunt so much, and now they don't hunt anymore because they got burned out, just like what you were saying. All they've done is just turn around and check hunters, and then they get burned out because wherever they go, they got to go somewhere else because everybody knows them where they're hunting.
Well, and that's very true. I mean, that's you got to go someplace else to hunt, and I never lost the hunt thing. I still love to hunt, and Yeah, I'd love to be able to, the hunt part is great. And if you get something, that's the bonus, and then you have meat in the freezer. That's okay. That's all good. So I always tease when the whole trophy discussion was
Oh, yeah.
going on. I always kind of chuckled because people would ask me, "Did you draw any licenses?" And I'd go, "Oh yeah, I got a trophy cow license." And they look at you like, "A trophy cow license?" And it's like, "Yeah, if I get a cow, it's a trophy."
Took me 5 points.
Yes, so, but that was how I looked at my license, was a trophy. So that was pretty important to me. So that whole discussion on what's a trophy, it was kind of, crawling in my
Yeah,
skin.
you saw that stuff from deep inside
Yeah.
the dark caverns of stuff.
So, but I still, and so getting back to what would I ask someone, and I would suggest to them to do some ride-alongs with some of those people that still have it here, and really see what it's like, because that get the lowdown. Because I think the other problem right now too with some of the new hires is that the way that the system is set up, it really is turning the game warden job into a 40-hour-a-week job. They're being taught, hey, this is how many hours
Yeah.
you can work, and so I don't blame anybody in CPW at this point, but I think it's the way the system is.
I remember as a kid, there again, working in that taxidermy shop, and those guys out of Colorado Springs that patrolled up all the way up to Woodland Park and out of eastern Colorado, and the areas were quite different then. But I mean, they were in the field all the time. All the time. And there's a few guys now that, even with the restrictions on hours and so forth, they spend a fair amount of time in the field because they're diehard game wardens. They're old school game wardens. They're not just district wildlife managers, they're game wardens. But I remember, I mean, the ones in the 1970s and 80s, they lived and breathed and ate and slept.
Oh, yeah.
Drank. And when hunting season came along, there's still a few, but that's all they did. That was it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. That's that. It's here. It's a way of life, and
now I see more often than not that they got 40 hours in, or they put their vacation time in for their area so they could go hunt or go on a vacation or whatever. And I'm like, it's hunting season. It's like, so
yeah.
I mean,
And I can think
a
of
different mentality.
times when I had an elk license down in South Park, and you'd be hunting, and all of a sudden you would just hear, and you'd hear 4 or 5 shots, and you go, crap, and you'd hike out and, okay, better go see what's going on. But so, yeah, that happened more than once. So, but yeah, there's still so those people that hopefully are interested in the job are still out there. So,
well, they're going to need them down the road. That's for sure.
Yeah. It was, if I had to redo my life, would I do anything different with the job? No. I thought it was the greatest career I could have had. So, loved it. Loved the agency. Like I said, did I get it? I was a good soldier. I'll put it that way. I was a good soldier. Always didn't agree, but I ran the company line. So, and I think that's what you have to do. Can't be a backstabber. So, and yeah, it was a great career, and just worked out perfect for me. So
I'm going to ask you the questions through this, and you're more than able to turn around and pass if you want to. But if you had a chance to sit down without a uniform on right now and sit down with Governor Polis, talking about wildlife management, what would you ask him to do, or what would you tell him from 40 years experience of dealing with Colorado's wildlife resources?
Oh, that'd be easy. I'd tell them to call off the wolves. Let that's the agency do its job. This agency is full of great people, great scientists, great researchers, people who care, and let them manage wildlife. Let them manage the fishery. Let them manage the people. Take your tentacles off of what's going on. I'd be more than happy to tell them that to his face.
Well, maybe we could set that up.
Okay, I'd be happy to talk to Jared.
If you had a chance to sit down with some animal activists, some extreme animal activists, and give them your perspective of why something shouldn't happen or should happen or whatever, how in today's environment would you navigate that conversation to get your point across without being condescending or demeaning, but hopefully to get some sort of buy-in from them in an amicable fashion.
And I think over my career, I think that's something that I kind of pride myself on. I never tried to be demeaning to anybody. I never lied to anybody. Even in law enforcement cases where you can kind of fib a little bit to get a guy to tell you something, that just wasn't my style. So I think what I would do on a case like that, and I can picture a person right now that I'd be talking to, that I would have him explain to me what they had going on, and then I'd go over the principles of the North American model and look at what this agency has done in 125 years, and you tell me what they're doing wrong. So I think that's kind of where I would go.
If you want to support a company that supported the efforts to defeat Proposition 127, then you need to support Davis Tent. Davis Tent has provided quality canvas goods for outdoorsmen for the last 50-plus years. For more information, go to davistent.com. If you want to support another business that was instrumental in helping us defeat Proposition 127, check out Salida Gun Shop. Salida Gun Shop in Salida, Colorado provides quality products, expertise, and knowledge from individuals that actually do what they sell. Go to salidagunshop.com. Listen to the advice of Cameron Haynes and support companies that are supporting your cause and your efforts. Minturn Anglers is one of those companies. Minturn Anglers provides product and fishing excursions in Colorado and are second to none. For more information, go to minturnanglers.com.
Your involvement was a little different than some, but probably not straight across the board. But somebody calls you and says, Mark, I've got a porcupine in my garage, or I've got raccoons that are living in my attic or something.
Call Dan Gates.
Yeah, see, that's what the problem has been since 1996 and Amendment 14. But did you try to coach them on what they could do for themselves, and that sometimes they were at fault because of the living arrangements or circumstances that they?
Oh yeah, and that's kind of that shift in our population where people don't want to take care of things themselves anymore. They have to have someone take care of it for them. But oh yeah, absolutely, it would be, well, here's something you could do and try to do, and I would still do that now. If my neighbor came over and said, "Hey, what are you going to do with these raccoons?" and try to work them through.
No, now you might go do it yourself.
Oh yeah, I would definitely try to help them out. So, but yeah, I did that all the time. I mean, even as an AWM, because I had been in Fairplay so long that I would still get calls on stuff, and they'd be, "Oh, well, try this, try that." So, I mean, I think that's part of being a wildlife manager, I think it was MUMA had it on was it MUMA? Put it on the stationery for wildlife for people. And really it is, we need to try to help people. And that comes back to, showing that credibility of the agency and the people working for the agency that you do care about wildlife. I actually worked with Commissioner Murphy back when I was in Aurora.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I still have one of his business cards.
Really?
From when I was in Aurora. I was just going through with the move, I was going through some stuff.
Jack Murphy.
Jack Murphy,
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack and his wife at the time, Penny, who has passed since. But yeah, so I definitely did work with Jack. So
That was a long time ago.
that was a very long time ago, yes. So when he became a commissioner, that was kind of a funny, "Hey, how are you, Commissioner?" And we was like, "You can't call me Commissioner." So
We have to be less than formal.
So, it's kind of funny though how things change, 30-something years later, and here's a guy I worked with that long ago, and now he's a commissioner, and if I had been condescending and, and he was kind of at the time, wildlife, just like he is now, kind of an urban wildlife removal specialist. And if I'd been condescending to him back then, how that would have bit me in the butt now, so, kind of just that, you never know who's going to be your boss. So.
Mhm. Yeah. Sean, you got any questions? You got some?
Walk us through for people that don't know kind of like you talk a lot about the job or you give examples, but like day to day you wear a lot of hats. Law enforcement, wildlife management, biologists. Just give us like a base level understanding of what we always talk about, the boots on the ground. What exactly are the boots on the ground doing for people aren't out in the woods all the time, but that are perpetuated wildlife? Like, how's that work?
So, as a district wildlife manager, kind of probably the advantage of that job is that no day is the same. So you can come up with, hey, I'm going to do this, this, and this today. And you get to that first this, and then all of a sudden somebody calls and says, hey, I got a bear underneath my house. And so then those other things go low priority and you go back into wherever you need to do to go take care of that bear. And so a day that you had planned to do maybe some habitat work and maybe go meet with the sheriff
Right.
has totally changed, and it's gone to, okay, I got out to the habitat stuff, but now I'm dealing with a bear issue, which is biological and helping the public. And then depending on what happens with Mr. Bear, what goes from there. I can think of one night I was actually heading in to work the concession stand at a high school basketball game. And I was in plain clothes, and people called and said, hey, we have a bear in our crawl space. And my truck was in the garage, so I didn't even have my truck. And so I was like, okay. And so they were on top of Hoosier Pass. So I said, okay, I'm going to run up. So I let the folks know I was going to be at the concession stand. And so I go up, and sure enough, they go, yeah, it's in our crawl space. And they didn't have a door on their crawl space on the top of Hoosier Pass in January. And they go, yeah, we came and the pipes were frozen. So we went to go start thawing pipes, and there's a bear in there. And I'm going, okay. I explained what was going on, that I didn't have my truck, didn't have any of my gear, didn't have a flashlight. So they gave me this Walmart flashlight that probably didn't have a beam from me to you. And so I go down to the crawl space, and I'm kind of shining that light and kind of doing this. And I get to the left, and here's this set of eyes looking at me probably 15 yards away. And it was like, yep, you got a bear in your crawl space. And that bear had pulled down all of the insulation from underneath the house and had made this big nest. There were pine boughs that it had brought in. It was hibernating.
Really?
And so I was like, okay, well, let me do some calls and just stay away from the crawl space. And people were really good, because they were like, okay, we'll. And so I made a few calls, and at the time we had a bear biologist by the name of Tom Beck. And I always said Beck knew more about black bears than black bears. And so I called Beck, and he was great because he always talked to you. And Tom was like, oh, try this, this, and this. And, bears usually have alternative dens. So hopefully, he's got another den nearby. And I mean, this is Hoosier Pass. It's butt deep in snow, January. So I get up there about 9 in the morning. The sun's up, and they're like, bear left. I go, the bear left? And I go, yeah, we got up, started making coffee, and that bear was gone. And so sure enough, went out in the snow, and here was where that bear, he went over by Montgomery Reservoir. And so I was like, you know what you need to do? And they're like, yeah, get the crawl space kind of buttoned up. And I was like, yeah, that'd be a good thing to do. So we did that. And then, so to kind of go, that day started there, and then checked ice fishermen for a while, and then came back to town, and then spent some time on the idiot box, the computer, So every day is a little different. I've had days where you get a call on a roadkill lion, roadkill bear, and you go pick them up, and you run by the school, and some of the science teachers are always wanting to see stuff, so you bring maybe some classes out, and you do a quick educational thing on, hey, this is what happens, and with little kids, you make sure it's not a gory thing, but it didn't look both ways when it was crossing the road, and you try to meet that level of whatever grade you were dealing with. And so every day really varied on what you were trying to do. I know I did school programs from preschool to high school, trying to get in and talk with kids, hunter education. And probably the biggest frustration for field officers is when you're trying to do land use. So, you're proposing that solar field,
Right.
and you're trying to make impact, or you're trying to make comments on the impacts to wildlife, both indirect and direct. And then hopefully that planning commissions and county commissioners listen to what the impacts are to make a decision to try to lessen the impacts on wildlife. So that's day to day is never the same. So you're always throwing a curveball sometime during the day, which is great. That's what makes the job fun, because nothing's the same.
Yeah.
When you become a supervisor, they're more you do a lot of that, so they're not as fun. So
How many trucks did you have in your career?
let's see, I had 2 in Aurora, let's see, I had 1, 2, 3, 4 in Fairplay, and then my work truck that I had when I retired, which was just about to be turned in. So I had 7. Oh,
I won't mention his name, but there was one individual that retired not too long ago, and when he left, he was amazed at how expensive gasoline was and
Oh,
tires and
I know exactly who that is.
yeah,
I know,
and cell phones and everything else.
I know, I know exactly who that gentleman is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he's like, you know how much a cell phone bill is? And I'm like, well, no kidding.
yes.
It's amazing when you work for somebody for 35 or 40 years and then you get thrown out with the bathwater to say, now fend for yourself and do whatever. It's like, holy crap, this really costs money.
I know exactly who that is. And I agree. Well, yeah. So, someone asked me, what's been the hardest thing about retirement? And I always had 2 cell phones. I had my personal cell phone and my work cell phone. And I think the hardest thing that I had to get over for the first couple of 2, 3 weeks, where's my work phone? I not that I missed it, just that I thought I lost it. And it was just getting that out of my head. And because I always tried to keep my personal life and my work phone.
Sounds like a pacemaker or something. You'd have thought you were going to die if you didn't have it.
So that's been.
But that's somebody else might get it. So, are you looking to do anything in your retirement? Or do you just you got something you want to try to accomplish?
I was teasing that I was going to be a greeter at Walmart, but they don't have greeters in Walmart anymore. So
They have Craig though. So,
yeah.
I mean,
So that's a pipe dream. So I'm easing into the retirement, and I won't take credit for this, but one of our fish biologists, Greg Poliski, who's in Salida, I ran into him a little bit after his retirement, and we were talking, and I said, how's retirement? He goes, getting better at it every day. And so I kind of like that. And the other thing I've been saying is every day is like a Saturday, and there are definitely days I have to look at the calendar and go, what day is this? Is stuff open? So I'm I want to get through this hunting season, and then kind of want to see what I can do to help things out, with help with wildlife, and kind of like to get back maybe
it's hard to get away from it completely, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's because it's here.
Yeah.
And so when I hear some of the struggles and I read some of the crap that you see on the news releases, or even the social media stuff, it just kind of drives me nuts that it's a lot of incorrect information, and I just kind of want to maybe give it a little, like I said, get through the hunting seasons and see what I can do to help out.
Mark, if you had a piece of advice for the sportsmen and women out of the community that criticized the agency for whatever, that doesn't matter what it is, and you had a chance in this capacity now that you're not wearing a uniform, what would you like to say to them to get them to understand, maybe from your perspective, for one, how difficult things are, but what they could do to be additive and help the cause as opposed to playing that armchair quarterback sitting on the sidelines?
I think the big thing would be see the forest through the trees. And so, a lot of times people get upset because CPW, man, you cut 10 elk licenses. What the heck are you guys doing? And people are getting so worried about that stuff, some of the minutia, instead of looking at the big picture of what's happening with ballot initiatives and that information that's out there. And so I think I would tell people, hey, be informed, educate yourself. Don't be worrying and worrying about that little stuff. Let's look at the big picture of things and really kind of get together. I kind of alluded to this before, that I think right now is so important for the sportsmen, the producers. We need to be on the same page with making sure, as we move forward with ballot initiatives coming through, that will continue to come through because they're so well funded, that we need to be working together and making sure that we're giving the same message to people, and making sure that as we go forward through the next 5-10 years, that we're fighting this battle to help wildlife. Be on the same page.
To be on the same page. What do you think the most pressing issue, wildlife and habitat, natural resource-wise, that this state has to be concerned about?
Besides the toothy things?
Besides the toothy days. Well, that's temporary, long term.
And make sure I don't get shot on this one. Probably recreation.
Yeah.
The impacts of recreation. As you know, I think when I came to Colorado in '79, I think the population was like a little under 3 million people.
1.9.
So, okay, in '79.
Mhm.
And now you're looking at 6 million people with the increase coming, and more and more. They want more and more and more. And the
They're like locusts on a cornfield.
the lack of respect for the resource is incredible. I know every time we go out, we pick stuff up. We were just out riding a week ago Friday, and we found sleeping bags. We found chairs that had just been left out 2 miles from a trailhead, just left. And and so we were like, well, we didn't have a pack horse with us, and so we said, well, we'll come back in and get that out, and just cans, bottles. I mean, we were 6-7 miles back, and you're finding trash. So you just kind of go, what are people thinking? So I think recreation and trying to rein in some of the recreation, which really then ties into, this isn't Yellowstone. Colorado's not Yellowstone. You can't make that comparison.
Yeah.
So that's I think the big challenge for wildlife is trying to be able to coexist with what's being pushed. So
you had a chance to talk to Governor Polis. If you had a chance to talk to some legislators in an open dialogue conversation where you weren't testifying somewhere, what would you tell them?
probably the same thing about let the agency do its thing. Let them manage wildlife. Don't be putting your hands where they don't belong. The agency knows what they're doing. They've done an incredible job. I mean, you look at all the great things that have happened at this agency, whether it's geese, turkeys, moose, otters. I mean, it's incredible what has happened, how CPW, DOW has managed wildlife in this state and continues. And even with all the struggles with people, it's still incredible. And so hands off, let them do their job.
They haven't done a very bad job at hardly anything, except for trying to manage the people and the perspectives of the people and the expectations of the people, and realizing now that we don't have what we had in 1965. Actually, we have more mountain lions now than what we had then. But a lot of other things we have as much or more, and that's with a growing human population. That's with a decreasing habitat area that the agency could turn around and manage. I've sat on enough of different boards and committees and appointed by different things that it gives you a little bit different perspective, and it's not so much that you just ride for the brand, but you know what is within the capabilities of the agency to be able to do things. But it takes all the government agencies, it takes the landowners, it takes the general public, it takes politicians, it takes administrators to be able to work all this together, because the only ones that really fully understand it is the agency. I'm not saying they understand it to everybody's likes and dislikes, but the only ones that fully understand it is the agency, and everybody else has a perspective or some boots on the ground experience, or maybe it's anecdotal, but not everybody is always working lockstep for the same thing because they have their different levels of interest.
Well, and they have different missions, right, that they need to do. And I mean, some of those perspectives are good because maybe I'm thinking this and I have this viewpoint and you bring that up and I didn't think of that. And if we tie that with this, it makes it better.
Yeah.
So I think that's really pretty important that the agency is trying to bring everybody in. And that's kind of the hope at a lot of times is that, you're trying to get those different perspectives,
Everybody's got an opinion.
Oh yeah.
It's like everything else. I mean, everybody's got one, or maybe 3 or 4.
I'll take the 5th from there. So
yeah. Sean probably gets tired of this, but it's kind of cool to see what interest and what sort of answers people give. But if I give you some phrases or some names or some You've seen some of this in what we've done. And for people that don't know some of the people or some of the phrases, that it won't mean as much to them. But give me a 1 or 2 word answer, or maybe a sentence, not like Martin Lowney did. But if I give you something, give me some sort of an answer back. If you decide you don't want to answer, that's fine. But you could take the fifth on something if you want. But if I mention Bob Holder,
Classic.
classic.
And Bob, I mean, I got to spend some time with Bob and work with Bob. Did a couple of his area and our area used to get together and we'd do some team stuff. And I got lucky enough to ride with Bob a couple of times. We tried to get in trouble together. And I mean, you talk about a game warden, that's Bob Holder. And I probably should have mentioned him before as far as mentors and just a guy that he's got it. So hell of a career and just A1 guy. So
How about water rights?
whew, complicated, but super important. It was water rights is something that I think folks need to make sure they understand as much as they can. Other than if you don't use it, you lose it. And we definitely had at least in South Park we have some water rights that we had to deal with, and then where we lived in Fairplay, we had water rights on our property that we had to administer, and so it can get complicated but pretty important, especially as we're looking at the state and as its population is increasing. Where's all this water coming? So
Yeah, if you ask somebody in Alabama that, they don't have any clue what you're talking about.
I tried to explain to my family when I came out about how water is liquid gold, and they just kind of gave you the dog look, like what? And
Water.
yeah, right, yeah. So, but water rights pretty important.
Ron Velarde.
Oh, Ronnie. Probably one of the old school ambassadors for wildlife. Ron did a lot of really good things for this agency, DOW, and you talk about a guy with heart. That's Ron Velarde. So,
How about ballot box biology?
oh, that's just, I mean, that's a lose. Wildlife loses. Look, 92. Bear initiative. Now we have more bears than we know what to do with, and we get in trouble because we have to put bears down, and it's because you can't get rid of them like we used to. Then you look at the trapping amendment. Now you have coyotes everywhere causing problems and critters causing problems. I mean, it doesn't work. And now you look at what we have out on the landscape. Once again, the last ballot box biology that went through, and I mean the turmoil that it has caused. When we had a wolf in South Park, and I told the story about trying to find out where the heck she was, and we had a producer. We had the second largest yak producer in the United States in South Park, and we had some concerns that possibly one of their animals had been taken by a wolf, and so we investigated, and it turned out it was coyotes. But long story short, that wolf moved on, and so when I called that producer and said, "Hey, wolf's gone out of your neck of the woods," and I remember her saying, "Oh, good, we'll finally be able to sleep tonight." And my response was, "I'm glad you can, because you don't sleep good, when they're there, you're just concerned about what's going to happen to the next guy, So ballot box biology is a lose-lose for wildlife."
How about Colorado Parks and Wildlife merge?
I'll take the fifth.
How about links?
Oh, links, man. I mean, a great project that took some time, had a few hiccups, right, initially, but has worked out great. So once again, it shows, Parks and Wildlife kind of has great people doing what we need to do for wildlife.
Denny Barron's.
Button pusher.
Maybe not the right button
Yeah,
fit on the
yeah,
west side of the
yeah,
aisle you sit on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
button pusher. So
How about the how about the media?
can be your worst enemy or your best friend. Just really depends on what they're trying to push that day. You're always worried when you had those bears in a house or lions in a house. You're really hoping it wasn't a slow news day, because they would show up and you'd be like, oh God, here we go. So they can be good or they can be bad. And maybe that's what CPW, another thing CPW needs to do better is tell the story better. Tell the story better, and to a point where the story is interesting. The news media wants stuff that they're going to sell things with or get people to watch. Do a better job of selling the product that we have out there.
Biggest challenge for a new game warden?
People, recreation.
Doesn't matter who, when, where.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, you think there's no place where you don't find people anymore. I mean, it used to be you could go to some of these wilderness areas and you might see one person, and now it's like there's like a turnstile. I remember when I was first in Fairplay, there was a game warden out of North Park, Kirk Snyder, and then John Broderick was out of Parachute, and the three of us, we were in training together, and every year we'd do a pack trip. And the year was my turn, we went into Buffalo Peaks Wilderness, and it had just turned into a wilderness. And so we packed in with the horses, and we saw more people than we did wildlife the 2 days we were in there. It was nuts. It was crazy. So doesn't matter where you're at. People in recreation.
People in recreation. Favorite method of take?
Right now, I'm still a rifle hunter. But muzzle loading's pretty fun, even though I stink at it.
Especially when it rains.
Yeah. My son took me out antelope hunting, and I missed an antelope at 43 yards. To this day, I still have this nightmare of seeing and then no antelope. So I just love to hunt. I just love to get out and hunt. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just being out there is what I enjoy.
What's Mark Lamm's favorite Western movie? Besides Blazing Saddles.
Actually, I was going to say Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but
well, that's really Western.
I don't know if I have a favorite Western movie. I mean, John Wayne in True Grit was always just, I don't know if I have a favorite Western.
If you had a chance to look back 20 years from now and see your kid and your son-in-law, what would you wish for them in wildlife management?
One, I hope they still have a job, and I hope they're enjoying the job as much as I did. I mean, I really do, because it's when it's here, the job is great. I mean, it's just, you become part of the community. The job is you, and I hope they enjoy it as much as I did. It was my better half always said when I'd go, hey, I'm going to the post office. I'll be back in about 20-25 minutes. And she'd go, I'll see you in an hour or two. And, I'd come back in an hour or two, and she'd go, holding court at the post office again. And I mean, because even if you were in plain clothes like this, I mean, people stopped and asked her questions, how do I get rid of that porcupine?
Yeah.
So, and that's, just, hey, I have my 40 hours, I'm done. You spent the time to try to help people. So I hope they enjoy it as much as I did.
What plans do you have to travel and go somewhere, you and Sheila?
Alaska. We're already talking about a Alaska trip. That's kind of our next adventure.
Hunting or just travel?
I think that at this point we're looking at, we're coming up on our 40th wedding anniversary. So we're going up there to just travel and winky winky, it'll be the scouting adventure for some fishing and some
It
hunting.
might just be like during September when the moose are in ruts.
So yeah, so that's our upcoming trip.
What do you want Mark Lamb's legacy to be?
I hope I left it better than when I got there. Um, I hope that people that I dealt with are more respectful of wildlife and wildlife management. And yeah, I think that's about it, So wildlife is definitely uh, a cause that I care enough about and the drive is still there. So like I said, kind of ease through this hunting season and I'll see how I can become more active.
How about one last one? What's your best conservation partner that you had dealing with wildlife habitat and wildlife management as a area wildlife manager over your career?
Man, boy, we were so lucky. Um, we dealt with Elk Foundation, we dealt with Mule Deer Foundation, we dealt with Colorado Open Lands, the Trust for Public Lands, the Conservation Fund. Um, we had some great partners. The Park County Board of County Commissioners were super helpful when we needed help. So we were really lucky with county commissioners that really cared about wildlife. And boy, I don't want to pigeonhole anyone. They were all great partners. I mean, that's how we were able to acquire some of our acquisitions and work on protecting some wildlife habitat. So I think all those, and I apologize to whoever I forgot, but we were lucky. We had some great partners.
What was it about them that made them good partners for wildlife and habitat?
What made them great partners was that with those agencies, we were able to work together with projects that either helped with conservation easements on properties or actually acquisitions. So a lot of we had quite a few of conservation easements or habitat projects that they were instrumental in helping fund partially, especially with the acquisitions. Um, so we were able to acquire a hunting access. We were able to on one property recently, the Collard Ranch State Wildlife Area. That was Western Rivers. I forgot to mention them. Western Rivers helped buy that property and take it off the market, so it didn't get purchased and subdivided or sub-ranched at. And then we were able to work the funding mechanism to help pay that off. And that project worked out even better because then, in addition to the Collard Ranch, we actually had an additional 200-acre piece that I don't want to say was thrown in, but was made part of the deal, which provided new access to a piece of forest and a piece of BLM that hadn't had any access to. So it worked out really well on that project. But acquisitions, the Mount Tom property, which is part of Ralston Creek State Wildlife Area, which when the whole discussion started on acquiring that property, they had some trail cameras set up, and then we set up some more trail cameras. And after the acquisition went through, the amount of wildlife on that property was phenomenal. It blew us away. And then the other one is up by Empire, the Powell's family State Wildlife Area was another one that the groups, once again, purchased the property, got it off the market, so it didn't get subdivided, and we were able to come back in with some monies and take care of it. So so that's it. That's kind of what those projects have helped us financially.
How about Senate Bill 003? This is for the gun guys.
Uh, Scary. I worry about it. I'm really hoping on August 2nd that when the legislation or the lawsuit goes through or starts, that they start seeing that it's unconstitutional. So, but
Are
those,
are you glad you're not going to be around for that?
I might not be at CPW around to help, but
Yeah. So we look forward to work on it. You got any closing thoughts, something you want to say or just get off your chest or tell people, whether they're in the agency or just talking to people about wildlife and conservation? You got anything you want to part with?
no, I think I hit it on it before, just, pot shots at the agency are pretty hurtful, and right now is not the time for that. All these Monday morning quarterbacks who, you start reading those threads, especially when you get into the thread and you're just going, what are you don't have a clue what you're talking about. So I think this is the time where we need to be uniting together and not separating because of one issue. So that's probably the big thing, and just have faith in CPW. I always said the pendulum swings, and right now the pendulum has swung so far left that it's crazy. It will swing back, but we got to be able to survive where the pendulum is at right now. So don't hold your breath, but just keep going with the flow. And I know that's when with my guys, we always talked about, hey, there are some things we have control over and some things we don't have control over. The same with the public. Do what you can. Take care of what you can and educate yourself and make sure that you stay away from ballot box biology.
Yeah. Mark Lamm, I appreciate your friendship. Appreciate your service.
Dan Gates,
Appreciate you
likewise.
coming up here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know you're not going to get rid of me and vice versa. So,
No, I don't want to. So
if you got anything you'd like to add at some point in time, you want to get back on, and this is a challenging topic and conversation that it's like a amoeba that just keeps formulating, because wildlife management is adaptive. But as soon as you turn around and throw people in on top of it in politics, it becomes more like, as I mentioned, locusts on a cornfield.
yeah, the people part of it, if you could take the people out. I mean, like I said, when I got into wildlife, I was going, I'm just going to work with animals. I don't want to deal with freaking people. It'll be great.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Through the Gates. For more content like this, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe on all of our channels.